everybody. A little bit of a bonus edition, a best of edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Hope everybody is enjoying a Memorial Day weekend. Listen, bottom line, first of all, I hope everybody enjoyed the AJ DeBonsa interview from a few days ago. Number one recruit in America. I don't think you need to be a BYU fan to enjoy it, so make sure to check that out if you have not yet already. But today, though, it's a little bit of a best of edition of the Aaron Torres Pod, okay? So bottom line is it's Memorial Day weekend. Some of you are traveling, but I know some of you are not. Some of you are looking for content. Some of you are looking for things to listen to discuss, to talk about. And so what we have done is we have gone ahead and created a best of edition of the Kentucky transfer portal offseason. That's right. What has Mark Pope brought in at this point? I think 11 new players overall, 13 players on the roster. And so what we did was we kind of pieced together all of our reactions from the first commitment of the spring. That was Cam Williams back the day that Kentucky played Tennessee in the Sweet 16. And we've pieced together as many of the reactions as we had, basically highlighting what has been an incredible offseason for Mark Pope. So again, this is essentially a best of version of the Aaron Torres Pod. Before we get into it, a couple notes. One, we will go in chronological order, and I think that's important. So as you listen to this, this is not new content. When Cam Williams committed, he was basically the only guy that we knew on the roster. And so we said, okay, you need to add this many guards, this many forwards, this many centers, whatever. And so if you are listening and you say, Torres, you're an idiot. We got a commitment from Jaden Quayens. It's like, well, that's coming. We'll get there. That's why we call this a best of edition of the show. So first off, there's that. It's chronological order. Again, we'll address team needs as they happen. So you'll hear me say something like, oh, you need to add this. And then they add it on later in the show. A couple other notes, by the way, I should mention, we don't have reaction to every player that committed. I seem to remember Mo Diabate committing like an hour before the national championship game. So we didn't react to that. And also there's some other stuff, Jalen Lowe, he committed at 10 a.m. the day of the Final Four. I'll be honest, I went back and listened to it. I was calling him Jaland Lowe, so I apologize to Jalen Lowe about that. But I think you get the point. It's a best of edition reaction to all of the major portal additions throughout the offseason, and I do think you'll enjoy it. Before we get started, first of all, again, hope you're having a great Memorial Day weekend. Full shows back on Tuesday. But if you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, now's a heck of a chance to do so. I mean, I'm pumping out content even on vacation, even while we're traveling for Memorial Day. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. We are closing in on 57,000 subscribers, which boggles my mind. We appreciate your support. Make sure you're also subscribed on Apple, Spotify, all of that good stuff as well. Also, before we get started, just very quickly, do want to thank our friends, do want to thank our partners, do want to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, I've told you all about Collie Puffs, but at that time of year, this weekend, you'll probably be at the beach. You'll be by the pool. You'll be by the lake. You're walking around somewhere with your shirt off, let's be honest, and you don't want to look like a slob. You need a snack that is healthy but delicious. My friends, you need Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, family-owned company. I've told you all about them. Not far from where I live. Joey, huge sports fan, was part of our Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. And basically, he was sitting on the couch one day, sitting there saying, I need a snack that is healthy but delicious, something I'm going to love, something my kids are going to love. He came up with Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but the best part is they taste delicious. So many of you have tried them, but if you have not tried them yet, make sure to do so now. For more information, what I need you to do is go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com. You can also check them out on Amazon.com as well. So check them out, ColliePuffs.com. You can order them on Amazon as well. By the way, I should mention really quick, if you're looking for a Father's Day gift, not a bad time to remember, our Hope and Pope t-shirts, Hope and Pope, you can get them at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise as well. But with that said, this is what it's time to do. It is time to get to our best of edition, Aaron Torres Pod, Kentucky Transfer Portal Offseason Edition. Again, full shows back on Tuesday. Thank you. Appreciate your support. Big news and notes. I did not get a chance. I got a lot of requests to do a video on Cam Williams, 6'8" forward who did commit to Kentucky on Friday. If you listen to our portal update on Tuesday, we actually did talk about him. So my buddy David Sisk from Rivals was the first one to kind of have this piece of news. 6'8" forward from Tulane, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, was a true freshman this year at Tulane, all AAC, averaged about 9.5 points per game, 41% shooting from three. And what's interesting about this commitment, of course, whenever Kentucky, whatever, there's a lot of, he only averaged 9 a game. He only played at Tulane. It's like, listen, ask NBA scouts about this guy, because NBA scouts are like, yeah, that dude could play in the league if he's developed right. And we know he is going to be developed right under Mark Pope. And so to me, I look at the decision by this kid to come to Kentucky, and I look at the decision by Kentucky to recruit this kid. I think it's perfect. I think it is actually a perfect fit. Let me explain why. Listen, we know that Kentucky has kind of needed that small ball 4, stretch 4, whatever you want to call it. They went after Caleb Wilson in high school. Nate Ament is still available. But to me, it's like, are you going to pay top dollar for a true freshman who's never played college basketball? Or go get a dude that's probably, frankly, a lot cheaper, and then spend way less money for a dude that's played college basketball, that's going to produce, and if everything works out, has NBA upside. And so to me, I love the fit of this kid. Now, look, Kentucky has a lot of work to do still on this roster. At some point, we'll talk about their offseason. We'll kind of look ahead to their offseason. And certainly they've had an interesting couple days in their own right, but they needed that stretch 4. This is the kid that they get. Listen, this is a kid that it wouldn't surprise me, almost like Otega Owe, where we're talking about him. Nobody was talking about Otega Owe as an NBA prospect at this time last year. Would not surprise me if Cam Williams came into the SEC, was very good early, and we're talking about him as an NBA prospect next year or the year after. So credit Mark Pope for getting his first commit of the 2025 recruiting cycle.
Was frustrated that they did not land Yaxel Lundenborg, was Kentucky. By the way, I did a video earlier in the week as part of our Thursday show, our Wednesday show, just about Mark Pope had kind of struggled to land some guys. A little bit polarizing, to say the least. Generally, I don't know. Yeah, listen, fans, you have every right to say whatever you feel in the comments, whatever. There were a lot of fans that were not happy with what I said about Mark Pope being unable to land guys. There were a lot of fans that said, you know what, Torres, you're onto something. But I bring it up because on Saturday, Kentucky does get its second commitment of the portal cycle. By the way, should always mention we're recording here about noon Eastern time. I want to say a little before noon. And so I just bring it up because stuff is always subject to change. More guys may come off the board, but Mark Pope did grab a guy that he absolutely needed in Jalan Lowe from Pitt. Okay. So listen, this was a guy that was a little bit, Pitt was just kind of an interesting team. Like, they were an early bubble team, but then really kind of fell apart in ACC play. And so they were never really like on anybody's radar. This is a really good point guard. Listen, not a great 3-point shooter, which, obviously in Pope's system, that could be an issue. But you give this guy the ball and you put other 3-point shooters around him. That could be a freaking problem for the rest of the SEC. 17 points per game, 4 rebounds, 5.5 assists per game. Now, again, 26% 3-point shooter. That's not great, but you don't need all 5 guys to be able to shoot, especially when you have Jalan Lowe, a guy that can get to the rim, that can finish at the rim, that can attack at the rim. I really like him. If you can average 17 and 5.5 in the ACC in a power conference, I don't care if you're not on a great team, you're a dude that can play. And so Kentucky gets this guy. First of all, just needed a guy. Obviously with some of the activity of the offseason with Kirk Creason not coming back, with 7, 8 seniors, you knew that you were going to need some pieces, but it doesn't change the fact that you kind of just needed somebody to just get some momentum as we're kind of in this pseudo dead period and a lot of people are getting restless. And I think this is the guy. And you look at him, and I go back to last offseason with Kentucky. Mark Pope starts adding pieces. And no one individual one is like, oh my God, that is the portal move of the offseason, or that is the 5-star of the offseason. But then you look up and it's like, oh, you have Lamont Butler and Otega Owe and Jackson Robinson and Kobe Brea. It's like I just look at it from that perspective of, Jalan Lowe is a very good player. Again, 17 points, 5.5 assists per game in the ACC. But think about what the possibilities are around him. Otega Owe if he comes back right now, Kentucky fans maybe a better insight than I do. I expect him back. I don't think he's a first-round pick, and if he's not a first-round pick, come back, develop at Kentucky, make a lot of money in college. By the way, yes, a million Kentucky fans have asked me about people tampering with Otega Oweh. I have heard stories. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's not, but I just bring it up because you look at Kentucky now, Otega Oweh and Jalan Lowe are a hell of a backcourt, okay? Super athletic. Both are attacking. Jalan Lowe's not quite the vertical player that Otega Oweh is, but he's a great finisher around the rim. And you look at the other pieces around them. Jasper Johnson is going to be a really good college basketball player next year. Aiden Lewis can now go to that backup point guard spot, and he isn't expected to run a team as a true freshman in college basketball. Malachi Moreno is going to be really good. Brandon Garrison, I think, has a chance to be a very good player next year. Colin Chandler came on late. Trent Noah came on late. So I just bring it up because, again, the pieces are starting to come together. And I still think you need one or two more big pieces in the portal. Cam Williams, who committed from Tulane, I didn't even mention. You still need one or two more big pieces in the portal. But I just bring it up because, I understand why Kentucky, we talked about it on the Wednesday show. Kentucky fans got mad at me for the title of the video. But what I said in the video was, you're going to miss on guys. And the other thing with the portal, it all moves so fast. I just did a panel on Friday. It was with Joe Tipton and Adam Finkelstein. And we were talking about the recruiting process and how crazy it is and how a kid may be committed at this time. And then an hour later, you're going somewhere else. I mean, I deal with it all the time. I mean, how many times have I just been wrong this portal cycle? Oh, Ryan Conwell, it's trending towards Indiana. Boom, he commits to Louisville. This guy's trending here. Oh, boom, he commits there. And so with Kentucky, I understand the frustration, but you're really not that far away from, again, having a very good and very interesting team. I think now part of the process is retention. Biggest recruit Kentucky has left is Otega Oweh. Go get that guy, get that figured out. You should be pretty good. Plus the three freshmen. I like how Colin Chandler developed. I liked how Trent Noah developed. Brandon Garrison, Travis Perry, on and on. I actually do like this team.
Hope everybody enjoyed a crazy national championship evening. Just got back from the airport maybe an hour ago. By the way, not even recording in the normal studio space. I'm here on my couch because my dog will not leave my side. She might come in midway through this video and say, you know what, Torres, Daddy, I love you, but you're not talking any more college basketball. But while she's sleeping, I had to spend half a second and talk about a huge story that broke while I was in the airport on, I guess it was Tuesday morning, okay? So Jaden Quaintance, we've talked about him a million times. I will get into his background and everything, but he was an all Big 12 freshman team player, 17 years old, youngest player in college basketball, averaged 9.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 blocks per game as a 17-year-old in the Big 12. Well, a week ago, he entered the portal. Of course, ironically, I was in the airport going to San Antonio when he entered. I did a reaction to him entering the portal at the airport in Las Vegas. Well, as I'm boarding my flight back to Los Angeles in a layover in Houston, somehow I got a San Antonio to layover Houston. Don't even ask me how. But in Houston, I see the news that Jaden Quaintance, who once upon a time was committed to Kentucky, decommits when John Calipari leaves. Well, he was in the portal. He is in the portal no more. And I promise you, if something big happened on Tuesday, we talk about it. No live show today. But we did get the news that Jaden Quaintance, 6'10", I believe top 10 type draft pick in the 2026 draft. He is out of the portal as he has committed to the University of Kentucky, baby. And let me say this. I know some of you are going to say, oh, Torres, you were critical of Mark Pope a week ago. I wasn't critical. I asked some tough questions. But at the end of the day, this is Mark Pope's single biggest recruiting win as the Kentucky Wildcats head coach. He gets a guy that, God willing, health-wise, and we're going to talk about the health stuff in a minute, I think could be a potential All-American. So credit Mark Pope. He gets what I believe the most talented player he has landed as the Kentucky basketball coach. And with it, I just got one question, baby. You got that hope in Pope because you better after what he just pulled off today. Hope in Pope, baby. Hope in Pope. Get that Hope in Pope t-shirt at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. But let's go ahead and dive into this because this is huge on so many levels, okay? So listen, we've talked about the Jaden Quaintance story so many times,
but we remember it from a year ago. We did so many segments on this kid. 6'10". Remember, he committed to Kentucky at 16 years old, then reclassified to play college basketball this year. He did it as a 17-year-old. He was the youngest player in college basketball. We all talked about how great Cooper Flagg was, and it's not that Cooper Flagg wasn't great, but Jaden Quaintance was 8 or 9 months younger than Cooper Flagg and averaged 9.5 points per game. Again, 8 boards, 2.5 blocks in the Big 12, the League of Houston, the League of Texas, the League of Texas Tech, I should say, the League of Arizona. He was awesome as a true 17-year-old. Truly should have been in his senior year of high school and could have been in his junior year of high school with the way these class, work, how everything works now. And he stepped into college basketball. He delivered, but again, was once upon a time committed to Kentucky. He ends up recommitting to Kentucky now a year and a half later. One, I think it's a cool story. I'll say this. I'm happy for the kid. Listen, this is no disrespect to Bobby Hurley, okay? But we've seen it. We got like 8, 9, 10 years. He's been there for a while. And I think, they took a chance on him a year ago when Jaden reopened his recruitment after John Calipari left for Arkansas. And let me even kind of go all over the place here. A couple things. One, I don't think it was the perfect fit for Mark Pope at the time a year ago. He's trying to build this veteran team. Kentucky fans understandably had been let down by so many freshmen, so many young guys, and it became a thing of, do I want to run back the same playbook as the previous head coach? And so Mark Pope, yes, he, there was communication with the Quaintance family, but I don't think it was the perfect fit for either side. But I think Mark Pope realized some things, which we'll get into in a minute. The Quaintance family realized that, listen, we love Coach Hurley, but we have 1 year to put Jaden in the best position to be an NBA top 5, top 10 pick. And it is a perfect fit and a perfect match, because I'll tell you this, when I look at Jaden Quaintance, I've thrown out the stats a bunch of times, so I'm not going to go ahead and do it again. But I bring it up because he is just scratching the surface of his potential. 9.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 blocks as a 17-year-old. Here's the crazy part. Go back and watch Arizona State games. They didn't run offense for him. Pretty simple what they're doing out there. Not tough to scout, okay? He's going to set a pick. He's going to roll the rim. He's either going to get the ball or he's not. And if you watched Arizona State, in most cases he didn't. If you watch Jaden Quaintance through the year, I was so impressed by his motor, by his energy, and by basically every single point that he got at Arizona State was off second chances, was off second opportunities, because there was no offense being run for him. And so he's just starting to scratch the surface of his potential. I don't think we even saw anything close to how good he can potentially be as a college basketball player and eventually as an NBA player, because, again, the system wasn't the fit for him. And so I saw Jaden's dad did an interview with Jonathan Givony. He talked about the system. He talked about the role. Think about this. Brandon Garrison was allowed to shoot threes. Andrew Carr, I know is a different player, took threes. This isn't going to be just Jaden Quaintance parking his butt in the paint and, you got to, just go get rebounds. No. I think you're going to be stunned with how talented this kid is and how much upside he has left, and, of course, what Mark Pope can bring out of him. Now, really quick, a couple things. One, because I know a lot of you are going to ask, the injury factor. And, we certainly never wish injuries upon anybody, but this is a reality in this recruitment, okay? Jaden suffered a knee injury late in the year. Now, according to the interview with Jonathan Givony, he had a surgery about 3 weeks ago now, so that's positive. And I talked to people that would know. Let me put it that way. One, Jaden's already ahead of schedule with his recovery. He's 17 years old. He's built like a Mack truck. All he does is live in the gym, even when he's healthy. And so I think the quote that somebody told me was, he's like Thor, I think was the quote, or Wolverine, Superman, whatever. I don't know. But the point I'm trying to make, he's 17 years old. He's going to be okay. Right now, the timeline is late July, early August, mid-August. He's able to get to do on-the-court activities, 1-on-0 type stuff. And then on top of that, I think he's going to be ready for the start of practice for contact. And I think in theory, he could be ready for the start of the season. Now, is he going to be day one what he was at his best at Arizona State? Probably not. That's a recovery. But right now, listen, I'll say this.
I don't think Mark Pope takes him if he doesn't think that he's going to be on the court, healthy, ready to play. I'll take it a step further. This I do not know. This is just me totally speculating. My guess is they probably had to clear some stuff with the UK medical staff before they took this commitment. Because they're not just going to be the rehab place. And I'm not saying that Jaden or his family would use Kentucky that way, but I'm just saying, they're not going to rush him. But if they didn't think he was going to be able to play this year or that he wasn't going to get on the court till February or March, they might have just passed on him. And so to me, I think that timeline matches up perfectly. Get healthy in July and August, get ready, ramp up, be ready for the start of the season, and then be a dog in February and March, okay? And so I am so excited to see this happen. Again, and by the way, that's always subject to change. I'm not a doctor, whatever. You get that. Really quickly, a couple other things. One, I want to say this. I love the roster that Mark Pope has put together this offseason, okay? And yes, let's be clear. I was critical. I was the guy that kept talking about, did Mark Pope, I had the video, is Mark Pope missing on too many guys? Mark Pope keeps missing on guys. What does it mean? But if you listen to the video, we talked it through. I said, it's not a big deal. Portal days, what did I say? I said, a day in the portal is like a week in real life. Stuff changes so fast. I mean, think about a week ago if I had told you Ian Jackson was going to be in the portal, Yaxel Lendenberg was going to be at Michigan, Jalan Lowe, however you say his name, I've been traveling, I'm just whatever, was going to, I don't even think he was on Kentucky's board a week ago, and now he's a Wildcat. Mo Diabate wasn't even in the portal, and he is a Wildcat. So, yes, I was a little bit concerned about the misses, and I think there was really one miss, if we're being honest. It was Donovan Dent, okay? Kentucky fans, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I don't think you were ever getting Yaxel Lendenberg. It's not a knock. I kind of know a little bit about that recruitment. I don't think you were going to be a factor there. And then Magoon Gwath from San Diego State decided, I'm going to go back to the school that I love, and I never even wanted to transfer in the first place. And so I just bring it up because it was really one miss. It was Donovan Dent. I'm guilty of it. I thought he was going to Kentucky, whatever. But Mark Pope lands his guy, and this is what I love about what Mark Pope has done this offseason, okay? In life, what you want to do, you want to learn and grow year over year. There are things that we are doing on this podcast and this YouTube channel that we weren't doing a year ago because it's working. It makes sense. We've learned from it. Something didn't work, etc. Okay. And so I bring it up because I think Mark Pope went into last offseason, first of all, way behind the 8 ball. We know he didn't get the job till a week from now, like April 15th or so. But he went into it. And I think, again, he kind of had this idea of Kentucky fans have been burned by freshmen. Let me get older guys that I can trust, that the fan base can embrace. And that's largely what happened. Lamont Butler, Kobe Brea, Andrew Carr, Amari Williams, Jackson Robinson. I know I'm missing a few. I apologize for whoever I forgot. Ansley Almanor, of course, was a factor. But I think what Mark Pope realized as the season went on, especially as you got deeper in SEC play and the injuries started to wear, is that sometimes, dude, listen, skill is nice and the mid-major guys, and they could do this and they could do that, and Kobe Brea hit this. That's not a knock on Kobe Brea. But sometimes you just need freaking dudes. You need dogs. You need mean MFers, okay? And when I look at the SEC this year, say what you want about how it ended for Auburn. They made a Final Four. They won the SEC regular season title, and they were a bunch of mean MFers, and when they got rolling, they were tough as hell, and they were going to kick your butt and take names. We know about Florida. Tennessee, I know Kentucky actually beat Tennessee 2 out of 3 times, but Tennessee, they're going to drag you into the mud and wrestle you and stick your mud in the face, and you got to get back up and fight back. And it's not that those guys didn't try, but by the end of the year, Kentucky was just overmatched. Think about that SEC tournament game against Alabama. Think about the Tennessee game in the Sweet 16. And so I think what Mark Pope realized is I have to trade a little bit of skill for dudes that I know can play at this level, compete at this level, and be fearless, okay? 4 commitments so far. I think it's worth noting. 3 of them are from the high major ranks. Jalan Lowe, point guard, Pitt. Mo Diabate, who we haven't even talked about. Mark Pope, can you get a commitment not on a day of a big game? You get Cam Williams, who's the 4th guy. You get that the day of your first NCAA tournament game. It was against whoever Kentucky played. I can't even remember. Troy, maybe. And then you get Mo Diabate the day of the championship game. I got a game to cover. I can't talk about it. But I haven't even talked about Mo Diabate. What I love about Mo Diabate,
He is a dog. He is a kid that has been through the wars in the SEC, and he brings quite almost literally his hard hat every single night. That's what Alabama does, the hard hat thing, right? They give out the hard hat of the game. And so I don't care about how many points Mo Diabate scored. You need dudes that you can throw in the second half at Auburn, at Bud Walton Arena, in Knoxville, that are unafraid. I'm not saying the Kentucky kids were afraid this year, but you get the point. And I think Jaden Quaintance fits that description as well. If he is healthy by the season, that is a dude you can go to war with any night, and you will never be at a disadvantage physically, stylistically, down low against anybody. By the way, just don't even take my word for it. Look at who was recruiting Jaden Quaintance before he committed. Auburn wanted that kid bad. Kansas obviously wanted him as well. So you look at who was interested in Jaden, and it comes down to Missouri wanted him. You go on and on. You look at who was recruiting Jaden. He is a kid you can go to war with every single night in the SEC. And I think now Kentucky is going to be bigger, more athletic than they were. They're trading a little bit of skill for much, much, much more athleticism and toughness, which I think they're going to have. Lastly, let's credit Mark Pope. Listen, I had to do the segment last week because you guys were asking me about it, and I think it was fair in the moment. Listen, to the OG listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod, I very much appreciate you because I'm never going to shy away from a topic. And a topic that had the fan base on edge last week was we've missed on a few guys. Louisville's got 2 or 3 commitments. Whoever, Alabama added this guy. This guy was there. What about that? This and that. And so you wanted some positive news. So we talked about the negative at the time, but you get Jalan Lowe, you get Mo Diabate, you get Cam Williams. Now you got Jaden freaking Quaintance. And I think the big thing is the portal, as I said a minute ago, it moves so fast. So if you miss on a guy, guess what? There's going to be 5 more in the portal a week from now. You don't fall in love in the portal. You fall in like in the portal, right? Well, they say you don't fall in love on the Jersey Shore. Don't fall in love in the portal. It's kind of the same. Sometimes you go out, you think she's the perfect girl or he's the perfect guy. Next thing you know, I don't even know where this analogy is going. Listen, I'm on like 2 hours sleep. Had to talk about it, but don't fall in love in the Jersey Shore. Don't fall in love in the portal. That is my theme for today. Don't fall in love in the Jersey Shore. Don't fall in love in the portal. But listen, Pope, and this applies to every coach, Pope, whoever, they're going to get their guys. Kentucky's always, what did the old coach say? Kentucky's always going to eat first. And I said it, by the way, really quick side tangent. We'll go. I'm rambling. I said this when Ian Jackson entered the portal. I said, these coaches at the highest level, the money is so big for players now, and the money's so big for the coaches, they're never going to miss out. You think Bruce Pearl has like 2 players right now? You think Auburn is just going to punt on next season because they missed on a player or 2 in the portal? No, they're going to go get MFers. They're going to figure out where they are, and they're going to get them. St. John's needs guys. Kansas needs guys. Tennessee needs guys. Arkansas needs guys. These coaches aren't going to go in shorthanded. And so it's the same with Mark Pope. To me, he proved last offseason he can identify talent. He knows how to put together a team, and I think he's doing a good job with this as well. So I could go on and on. I've already made my Jersey Shore reference. I'm half asleep. My dog is now sleeping too. She's very happy that I'm home. I'm going to go do whatever. But Jaden Quaintance is a Wildcat. Congrats, Kentucky fans. You should be really fired up.
And then he had a weekend for the ages. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first big piece of news, by the way, I'll just apologize in advance. I'm going to butcher this name. But Saturday, I was actually with the Collie Puffs boys. I was with Brian and Joey from Collie Puffs. We were at an event. And I bring it up because I turn on my phone. I see the news that Andrija Jelovic, a 6'11" forward from Croatia who played for Mega BMAX in Serbia, has committed to the Kentucky Wildcats, one of the top international prospects in all of the world, is headed to Lexington. And then, oh, by the way, the bigger news that came just moments later, Brandon Garrison, former McDonald's All-American, began his career at Oklahoma State, played at Kentucky this past year. Brandon Garrison commits to returning for a junior season, a second year with the Kentucky Wildcats. So, oh, by the way, last I signed on, Lamar Wilkerson, guard from Sam Houston State, is at Keeneland Racetrack, the horse races, with Mark Pope. We'll see if some news breaks by the end of this show. By the way, if you're watching on late Sunday, early Monday, maybe a Lamar Wilkerson commitment happens. If it does, don't be mad we didn't cover it right now. We're doing this in real time at 7:34 Eastern time. So let's go ahead and dive into a busy weekend for Mark Pope. First of all, I kind of want to work backwards. I want to start with Brandon Garrison, okay? Because I think if you just look at Brandon Garrison's stats, he averaged 6 points and 4 rebounds per game. And if you're not a Kentucky fan, you're going to sit there and say, oh, who cares? It's not a big deal. Who is this guy? Why is a guy like Torres even talking about it on this show? This is a big deal, okay? First of all, as I said, Brandon Garrison, 6'11", really closer to 7 feet, super athletic. And I think the thing that stood out for me was a great role player for the Kentucky Wildcats this past season. Yes, he only averaged 6.5 points per game. But if you actually watch the games, there were certain games where he absolutely positively carried the Kentucky Wildcats. How about the game against Gonzaga? 10.9 rebounds. Kentucky wins in overtime in Seattle. He had 11 and 6 against Bama. Tough loss with 5 assists. That was the game at Rupp that could have gone either way. 13 points and 5 boards against Georgia. 15 points and 4 boards against LSU late in the year. 12 points and 4 boards in a win against Oklahoma. So he's not a finished product, but he was never supposed to be a finished product. He came last year to back up Amari Williams. He was one of the best backup big men in the country. And now he's coming back for another year. And why this is important is a couple things. One, besides the fact that he's really good, I think there was real thought that he wasn't going to come back. And, this is always the fine line in college basketball this time of year when you hit the portal. You have an opportunity sometimes to take good players, but what does it mean for guys on the roster? And so I bring it up because obviously last week, Mark Pope adds Jaden Quaintance, superstar, dynamic power forward / center from Arizona State, former McDonald's All-American, former 5-star, youngest player in college basketball this past year, all Big 12 freshman team, previously had been committed to Kentucky. And in that moment, you want to celebrate it. But then you start to hear rumors of, well, how does that impact Brandon Garrison? Does he feel like he's not going to get a starting spot? Does that mean that he may decide to enter the portal as well? And I think there were a couple days of very anxious times if you're a Kentucky Wildcats fan. And I think even if you're a Kentucky Wildcats coach or somebody in that building, you just don't know. And so to get Brandon Garrison back, that is huge. Because first off, let's remember this about Jaden Quaintance. And I love Jaden Quaintance. I think he's one of the most I think he's going to be like phenomenal next year. But he is coming off ACL surgery. And we do have no idea if he'll actually be ready for the start of the season. Now, I've been told that he will be. I've been told that he should be back on the court by mid to late August. He should be able to ramp up, should be doing 5-on-5 in the preseason. But you just never know with major knee surgeries. And even if he's back, it's hard to imagine he's going to be 100% on night one. Remember, first week of the season, you play Michigan State in the Champions Classic. You got Gonzaga in Nashville. You got Louisville in the out-of-conference. I mean, the schedule is thankless. And so now you don't have to rush back Jaden Quaintance. Now you don't have to worry about what if he isn't ready to go 100% on the opening night. And then to take it a step further, it's even better. What happens when he does come back? What if he is 100%? What if he is capable on opening night of playing? Now you have one of the most ferocious backcourts or front courts in all of college basketball. I think you can play those two together. I know from the Quaintance camp, I don't think that they think of Jaden as just a true 5-man, of just he's going to park his butt in the paint and, going to rebound and give energy. No. He wants to be able to do more on the perimeter. He wants to be able to shoot more. He wants to play with another big guy. He doesn't always want to guard an opposing team's 5. And so now you can play both of them together. You can play both of them separate. You're basically too deep with McDonald's All-Americans at the 5 spot. But again, you can also play them together. Now, really quickly from Jelavic perspective, Andrija Jelavic, listen, I'd be lying if I said I knew a ton about him. But what I will say is a couple things. Mega BMAX is one of the best. They are one of the best European teams in Europe, especially in the developmental game. I remember, Kentucky fans, you may remember this. Remember about 4 or 5 years ago, you guys played in the Bahamas. You played Mega BMAX, and they were a team that had 3, 4, 5 guys that were on the trajectory to be drafted. And so with Yelovich, I can't say I'm not an NBA scout, but is he a player that I believe is capable of being in the NBA? Yeah, he is. Pretty athletic for a guy his size, can shoot the crap out of the ball. And I think most importantly, what stands out to me, I think he kind of brings something that nobody else in your front court next year has. You have Brandon Garrison. I love Brandon Garrison. I just raved about Brandon Garrison. But this past season, Brandon Garrison was a 30% three-point shooter. Jaden Quaintance, not a very good three-point shooter at this time in his career. Mo Diabate is not a great three-point shooter. And so this kid is 6'11", probably going to play the four mostly for you, and he can stretch the floor. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's a very good three-point shooter. Looks like a player that could project to an NBA guy. And you're talking about this guy as probably, when Jaden Quaintance is healthy, your fourth big man behind Diabate, behind Brandon Garrison, behind Jaden Quaintance, and now you have this guy? That is ferocious, and that is monstrous, okay? And what I would say as we start to wrap on this segment, a couple things stand out. First off, I'm going to work under the assumption that Otega Oweh does eventually come back, okay? I know nothing's official yet. I assume it will come at some point, but I only bring it up to very simply say that if Otega Oweh comes back, this team has just about everything, okay? First of all, we talked about it when Jaden Quaintance committed. I love the athleticism and the physicality of this front court. By the way, I didn't even mention Malachi Moreno, a McDonald's All-American who's committed and playing in the front court. But I bring it up because you look at this front court, and I go back to when Jaden Quaintance committed, and we talked about it. The best thing you can have as a fan is not only a good coach, but a coach that is aware. What do I mean by that? I think Mark Pope learned a very valuable lesson in year one in the SEC. I think it was great to have all that shooting, all that spacing, all that this, and our offense is so fun. But there were times where they just weren't athletic enough. They just weren't tough enough. They just weren't physical enough. They just got bullied. They got bullied by Auburn at Rupp Arena. They got bullied 3 separate times by Alabama with Cliff Omiori, with Grant Nelson, with all the big guys that they had in that front court. They got bullied in the Sweet 16 by Tennessee, where you could just see about 5 minutes in that game. You're like, oh, they don't have the athleticism to keep up. And so it's clear to me that Mark Pope has kind of prioritized, hey, we're going to give up a little bit on the skill side to make sure that we're athletic enough and we're tough enough. That's what Jaden Quaintance brings. That's what Diabate brings. I think Jalen Lowe brings that at the point guard spot. But then they now add more of that with Brandon Garrison. When Brandon Garrison, say what you want about, he wasn't scared when he stepped in the SEC. He was one of the few guys that athletically could handle things in the SEC. And so I love that. I love the skill that Yelovich brings. And I look at this team, and it's basically complete. Kentucky fans, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you need probably one more guard, which brings us to Lamar Wilkerson. We'll get to that in a minute. You need one more guard. Front court, or the back court, excuse me. You do have Jalen Lowe. We're assuming Otega Oweh is back. Jasper Johnson, who, of course, is 5-star player, whatever. But you did lose Kirk Kriisa. You did lose a Caden Lewis as a player who was committed, who decommitted last week. And so I think you need one more guard. Now, respectfully, I think in the moment, we saw that Travis Perry, if need be, can be an SEC guard. Now, I don't think he's a guy you want to rely on for 28, 29 minutes, but at the same time, he is a serviceable guy. But it feels like you're one piece away from, I think Kentucky's already a top 10 team, in my opinion. The question is, can you get that last piece, that bucket getter, that guy that fills the ball in the basket? And if you can, what does it mean for next season? Obviously, the guy that everybody is pursuing right now, Lamar Wilkerson. For people who were not paying attention on Sunday, Lamar Wilkerson actually took a visit to Indiana earlier in the weekend. I think Indiana was probably perceived as the favorite coming in. Then goes to Kentucky on Sunday. Mark Pope, you little devil, you little devil, Mark Pope, takes him to Keeneland, the racetrack. I saw him, with the horses, and they're bringing the horse to Victory Circle or Victory Lane. I know Victory Lane's more of a NASCAR thing, whatever. What I'm trying to make, Lamar Wilkerson looked like he was having the time of his life. Now, I don't expect Lamar Wilkerson. We'll talk a little bit about him more in the portal segment to come. I don't expect Lamar Wilkerson to necessarily commit prior to taking all his visits. Indiana, Kentucky, he still has Ole Miss and Auburn. But to me, you land Lamar Wilkerson, we're talking about a top 5 team going into next year. I love the front court. I love the athleticism. I love the listen, I look at rosters all day, every day this time of year. There's not that many teams that have the toughness and athleticism in the front court of Brandon Garrison, Jaden Quaintance, Mo Diabate, on and on. And then, of course, you have the toughness and athleticism in the backcourt of Jalen Lowe and Otega Owe as well. So a tough couple days for Mark Pope and the Kentucky Wildcats. Okay, so we've talked, obviously. Listen, first of all, we've come full circle on Mark Pope. Okay, so first of all, let me say this. I had a bunch of people in the comments today on Twitter. Torres, you're the guy that said Pope can't land anybody. Listen to the segment that I did at the Final Four. There was a question on a thumbnail that said time to panic or cause for concern or something. But if you listen to the video that I did at the Final Four, I said, take a deep breath, Kentucky fans. Kentucky is always going to get their guys. Well, they got another one on Monday, and it might, in fact, be the final guy that they get of major influence and major significance this offseason, as on Monday, Denzel Aberdeen, the 6th man of the Florida Gators national championship team, he went in the portal on Friday. By Monday, he is officially a Kentucky Wildcat. Big move, big addition. I love this addition. Love what it says about the 25-26 Kentucky Wildcats. And by the way, let me say this. I think it says something very definitive about what Mark Pope wants to do this offseason and what he wants his 25-26 roster to look like. So let's go ahead and dive in. As always, make sure you follow our Torres on UK page. That is for all of your late-breaking Kentucky news. Shout out to Mark, our intern who runs it, helps me run it as well. Also, obviously, as always, our Hope and Pope t-shirts at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. All right, so Denzel Aberdeen, really interesting player. He was actually a very, if you're like a real college basketball diehard, and if you're watching this show in April, you are. He was a guy that if you watch Florida, everybody loved Walter Clayton, and with good reason. Will Richard, Elijah Martin. Every time Denzel Aberdeen came in, good things happened. Finishes the season as the team's 6th man, 7.5 points per game, 35% three-point shooting. Couple things. One, when you actually watch the games, I think it was pretty obvious that basically he was actually, like for basically anyone else in college basketball, he could have started. They had 3 fifth-year seniors. One of them is going to be a top 15 pick in the NBA draft in Walter Clayton. The other 2 were very good college guards. I think they could get a cup of coffee in the NBA. But 2, the other thing was when Denzel Aberdeen was thrown into the fire as a starter, he was a very good player. 14.5 points per game, 41% three-point shooting in games in which he was a starter. So just because he wasn't technically a starter all season, just because he didn't play starters minutes, doesn't mean that he's not capable. And that, to me, is what stands out about this addition. Now, it's funny, by the way, I'll say this really quick. You know, I saw a lot of negativity about him even entering the portal. How can he leave? He's going to be a starter, reigning national champs. He's from Florida. Listen, this is the new world. And I think what's important to note, Denzel Aberdeen is a very good player that was very in demand and probably not an NBA player, though. And so, like, for me, I don't have a problem with him entering the portal because next year he can make literal life-changing money, and it might be the best money that he ever makes the rest of his career. So I had no problem with him entering, but I do think that he is a better guard that he's being given credit for. Again, 7.5 points per game, 35% shooting doesn't stand out, but 14.5 points per game, 41% shooting from 3 in games that he started. He is a very good player. I'm here to tell you, like I said, if he went to probably 350 of 360 other schools, he would have started. He would have put up big minutes. He just so happened to be playing in probably the most loaded backcourt in college basketball. Because of that, I'll also say this. I think there's a misconception about Denzel Aberdeen and the role that he will have at Kentucky. I've seen a lot of people say, why are you leaving to be a 6th man at Kentucky or this or that or the other thing? I don't think he's going to be a 6th man. I think when I look at Kentucky, it's very clear to me how Mark Pope wants to use his backcourt. Assuming Otega Owe comes back, here's what I think the plan is. I think the plan is Jalen Lowe at point guard. Of course, that's the point guard who was at Pitt, 17.5 points per game, 5.5 assists per game. That's going to be your point guard. I don't think that's a surprise. Otega Owe, your best player this year from start to finish, no injuries, was reliable. He's testing the NBA draft process, but my assumption right now is as good as he is as a college player, he will be back and playing college basketball next year. He's going to, frankly, make more money playing in college next year than he would have. He's going to be one of your guards. And then I think Denzel Aberdeen's going to be in the backcourt as well. Mark Pope is probably going to start 3 guys in the backcourt. You know what that reminds me of? How about this year when he did the exact same thing? It was Lamont Butler, Otega Owe, and Jackson Robinson for most of the season. Kobe Brea got a few starts late. There were some other guys that kind of came in and out of the lineup. And then I think at the 4-5 spot, what you're going to have is probably to start the year, if Jaden Quaintance isn't ready to go, Mo Diabate from Alabama will be your starting 4, and Brandon Garrison will be your starting 5. And then when Jaden Quaintance comes back, you either move Mo Diabate to the bench or you move Brandon Garrison to the bench, and Jaden Quaintance, when he's healthy, he will then be your starting 5 or your starting 4-man. A couple things on Jaden Quaintance. I know this is a Denzel Aberdeen segment, but one, I know that one thing from the Quaintance camp was that I don't think that they thought he was just a 5-man. In other words, I think at Arizona State, and we've talked about this, they felt like he got thrown into the post, park your butt down there, offensive rebound, whatever. And I think they feel like he has a lot more to show off in his skill set. So I believe that he will be playing more minutes at the 4 than maybe he did at Arizona State. Doesn't mean he can't play at the 5. And I actually think you can play him and Brandon Garrison together. Now, he's got to prove that he can do it game after game after game. That's after proving that he's healthy. But then also, if you want to go small, you could play Mo Diabate at the 5, probably start Jaden Quaintance at the 4, and or Jaden Quaintance at the 5, and have Brandon Garrison come off the bench. And so to me, I don't think Denzel Aberdeen is going anywhere to be the 6th man. He was the 6th man last year. I think he's going to start at Kentucky, and I think he's going to contribute and play right away. What this says, though, and this to me is the important part, okay, is I think there's a bigger picture story and a bigger picture narrative about Kentucky basketball and about what Mark Pope wants to do with his second roster, wanted to do, and now has successfully done. What this says to me is very clearly this, is that Mark Pope this past year realized that as skilled as that Kentucky team was, it simply was not athletic enough. It needed to get more athletic. It needed to get bigger. It needed to get more physical. And most importantly, like I said, it needed to be more athletic. And I think to the credit of Mark Pope, Hope and Pope, baby, he came through and he delivered, okay? And so you look at the situation with Kentucky last year. Listen, it was a great story. By the way, say whatever you want about me. I said in the preseason, this notion that they weren't a top 25 team, I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I said Kentucky is going to be a top 25 team. They're better than people are giving them credit for, okay? And it was basically based mostly on skill. Mark Pope kind of brought that BYU system, that BYU offense with him. And basically, listen, I think part of it was he wanted to do kind of the opposite of what the previous coaching staff had done. He wanted to get older. He wanted veterans. He wanted grown-ups. He wanted guys that he knew could handle the stage of Kentucky. And so he did it. He added Jackson Robinson. He added Kobe Brea. He added Andrew Carr. He added this guy, that guy, whatever. But then what I think happened by the end of the year, you get an injury or two, and all of a sudden, you realize skill only gets you so far, right? Lamont Butler, to his credit, was basically playing the second half of the year with one shoulder. You feel awful for Lamont that his career couldn't have ended better and on a more healthy note. But at the same time, he's kind of not the guy that you thought he was. He wasn't the guy that he was in December and January by the end of the year just because of the injuries. That's not a knock on him. It's just a reality. Jackson Robinson is out. Now, all of a sudden, again, a Kobe Brea, who you were hoping to be your 6th guy, shoots threes off the bench. Now he's got to play starters minutes. Now a guy like Trent Noah, a guy like Colin Chandler, they have to play more minutes than you were expecting. And you could just see by the end of the year, Kentucky just didn't have the horses. They just didn't have the dudes to compete with the best teams in college basketball. Alabama in the SEC tournament, it wasn't close, and we know it. And it's okay. It's not a knock because you were playing a bunch of guys that you didn't want to play. Also, Tennessee, I know you beat them twice in the regular season. You get to the NCAA tournament, they were just so much more athletic and physical than the Wildcats were. It's not a knock. It's just a reality. And so I think what Mark Pope very much prioritized, and we've talked about it all offseason, we need dudes. We need alphas. We need dudes that when stuff goes wrong, when things aren't perfect, when the play isn't executed flawlessly, that can just go make stuff happen, right? Mo Diabate is a guy that can just get you 2 offensive rebounds on a given possession and make stuff happen. And, he's not going to get pushed around. He's not going to get shoved around. He's crazy athletic. He's done it in the SEC. Jalen Lowe is a guy that can get you a bucket, can get somebody else a bucket. You look at the guy they just added today, Denzel Aberdeen. He's a guy, 41% three-point shooter in his starts, but also a guy that is a great finisher at the rim, and he's not intimidated by big moments. He only had 7 points in the national championship game, but he carried Florida for a big stretch of that national championship game during that, when Florida was struggling. Will Richard was great in the first half. Denzel Aberdeen was a big part of a second half run that they had to put them in position to eventually win that game against Houston. And so when I look at Kentucky, I give Mark Pope credit because clearly there has been a plan going into this offseason. We're going to trade a little bit of skill for a little bit of for a lot of bit of athleticism. And eventually we're just going to believe that our dudes can take over games late when things don't go perfectly. And so it's interesting because I look at the additions via the portal, 5 total additions, right? What stands out to me? 4 of them have major power conference experience. Mo Diabate at Alabama, Jaden Quaintance at ASU. You also have Denzel Aberdeen, who of course comes from Florida. You have Jalen Lowe, who comes from Pitt. Those are 4 dudes out of the 5. Cam Williams, by the way, is clearly a high major player that has NBA draft potential long term. But you add 4 dudes who clearly have high major athleticism, size, skill, toughness, with Otega Owe and Brandon Garrison, 2 guys who came from the power conference level who played with you last year. And then, oh, by the way, now Jasper Johnson, a top 25 prospect, a top 15 prospect, a guy that, was a 5-star. Now he doesn't have to be a superstar, but he's going to add some more. Malachi Moreno is going to add more. That's on top of the other guys. So if you're a Kentucky fan, I think you should actually be really excited about this team because it reminds me a lot of last offseason, right? I remember when Ansley Almanor committed, and I remember when Andrew Carr committed, and it's like, well, Ansley Almanor, he only had this offer, he only had that offer, and it's like, yeah, but Mark Pope is building a team with pieces that fit and with intention, and it's clear that he's doing the same. I love the addition of Denzel Aberdeen. It's going to be a fun year with Kentucky. I just said it a minute ago with Arkansas. Cannot wait to see what this roster looks like in the 2025-2026 season. By the way, producer Matt, you might as well pop up the Matt Norlander tweet from earlier in the day because I do think this is an important note to kind of put a bow on this conversation. Norlander, who is very close with the staff, I think Cody Feger is his guy, said, quote, barring any portal defections, Kentucky has ended its pursuit of all other portal targets. Sources told CBS Sports getting Denzel Aberdeen means they're moving off of Andrei Stojakovic, who we're going to talk about in a minute, Rylan Griffin. Otega Owe is going through the draft process, but I expect him to come back to Lexington. So basically, assuming we get no crazy portal defections, assuming that the 2 remaining 5-star commits in the class of 2025, Malachi Moreno and Jasper Johnson, come back, remember, there is expectation that this is the end for Mark Pope. Tell you what, shout out to Mark Pope. I saw this from my buddy Brandon Ramsey from KSR. Mark Pope getting his first commitment as a Kentucky coach April 21st of 2024, put together the rest of the roster from there. He got maybe his final commitment of the 25-26 roster also on April 21st. So Mark Pope, take off May, go find a beach, and didn't really expect any real, important or significant news here on Monday. But apparently, Mark Pope does not abide by Torres' schedule. That is because, roster building season is largely done. But I think every team in America is still looking for a piece or 2 to add, especially as we anticipate and expect scholarship limits to actually go up to 15, meaning it's a little bit easier to bring in those back end of the bench guys that can help you at practice, things like that. Well, I bring it up because Monday afternoon, this was a story that felt like it developed pretty quickly. But Reese Potter, 7'1" center, originally from Lexington, played the last 2 years at Miami of Ohio. He entered the portal right before the deadline, and Earlier today on Monday, he committed to, we used to do this all the time. We'll do it again. Drum roll, please. Reese Potter, 7'1" center from Miami of Ohio, originally from Lexington, commits to the University of Kentucky, baby. That is right. Nothing else to say other than you already know, people. Do you got Hope and Pope? Because Torres got Hope and Pope. Another nice commitment. As always, you can get your Hope and Pope t-shirts at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Let's go ahead and dive in and listen. I know we're going to have fans from other fan bases watch this video. So let me start by saying, listen, is this the most significant commitment of Kentucky's offseason? It isn't. And that's okay. And that's not a knock on the kid. That's not a knock on the program. Kentucky's season is going to be defined by Jaden Quaintance, Jalen Lowe, Otega Owe, assuming he comes back, Brandon Garrison, on and on and on. But it doesn't mean that this commitment isn't very important for Kentucky's season. First of all, I think, if you're watching this video, you probably know at least a little bit about Reese Potter. But like I said, 7'1" from Lexington, played the last 2 seasons at Miami of Ohio. Now, he quote-unquote only averaged about 6.5 points, about 4 boards, and 1 block per game this year. Now, admittedly, part of it is he only played 17 minutes per game this season. I think it's interesting. We had Will Wade on this show a few months ago when he was still at McNeese, and he said, when you're at one of those levels, like I find it interesting because somebody would sit there and say, well, how are you not playing if you're 7'1" at the mid-major level? It's like sometimes those guys just get played off the court in those conferences because the teams are so small, they're so guard reliant. Will Wade said we didn't recruit a 7-footer because basically we would play him 1 or 2 games in league play. Everybody else is too small, whatever. So the stats don't surprise me. The fact that he wasn't playing 28 minutes a game doesn't mean the kid can't play, but he was a very good role player at Miami of Ohio. And now he comes to Kentucky, where I actually think he is going to play, admittedly, more of a bigger role than people think. And oh, by the way, if you think Torres is trying to oversell this guy just because he committed to Kentucky, this is what I can tell you. Listen to reports, read reports. First of all, 7'1", that's important. But I saw Matt Jones tweet this out. This was a kid that after he entered the portal, North Carolina made a real push at, wanted to try to get him in their program, probably, frankly, in a similar role at Kentucky, was contacted by other power conference schools. Washington in the Big Ten apparently really did make him a little bit of a priority. So the fact that Kentucky is getting this guy, I think it's great. Do I think they got a little bit of a hometown discount? Yeah, I think they did, because kids that grow up in Lexington generally want the opportunity to play for the University of Kentucky, and he is getting this chance. So now, question is, who is he and what role will he bring to Kentucky? Like I said, I think it's actually going to be a very important one, okay? First of all, I'll say this. You never know how injuries are going to play out, how things are going to play out over the course of a season. And especially with Jaden Quaintance coming off major knee surgery, and I think he's going to be okay. I think he'll be back for the start of the season. But now, I don't think Mark Pope was going to rush him. But even if I know Mark Pope wasn't going to rush him, but I bring it up to say now you have another body where Jaden Quaintance, if you have to ease him in, if he somehow falls behind schedule, if he's not ready to go day 1, hour 1, minute 1, guess what? You still got Brandon Garrison. You still got Mo Diabate. And now you have this guy that is capable of giving you minutes. Again, if Jaden Quaintance isn't back at full strength, if there are injuries throughout the season. And listen, nobody dealt with more injuries this year than Kentucky. It's like, you look at your roster on paper in April, May, June, and I think everybody thinks, oh, we have enough this, we have enough that. Then the season happens, and all of a sudden you just realize that you probably could never have too much of anything in college basketball. Injuries happen. This isn't the NBA. You can't call guys up from the G League. You can't sign guys in the middle of the season. So what you go into June and July and August and certainly September when classes start for the fall is what you're quote unquote stuck with for the entire season. And so to me, what I think is interesting is that, one, I think you could get more minutes early than we probably anticipate because of the fact that, Jaden Quaintance isn't 100%. But 2, at the very least, you know what he gives you? He gives you a really big, really good body to have in practice. And this is something that I think is going to be interesting as we evolve in this NIL portal era, is the ability to fill out the back part of your roster with guys that can play in a pinch, but accept a role, maybe accept a small role, but want to be part of your program and can still be good contributors to your program, practice players, etc. Okay. I'll give you an example from the non-Kentucky world. I mentioned this on Sunday's Aaron Torres Pod. UConn had a little bit of a staff reshuffle. They bring in Mike Nardi from Villanova, but I only bring it up because Tom Moore, who is a UConn legend, was part of Jim Calhoun's staff, got a head coaching job at Quinnipiac, joined Dan Hurley at Rhode Island, then came with Dan Hurley back to UConn. Tom Moore moved into the quote-unquote GM role at UConn, and he did a media availability on Sunday, and in that media availability, he basically said, like, look, the core of our roster is set, but we are still looking for a guy or two, maybe three, that can come in either with no NIL or very limited NIL, that understands a role, that is ready and willing to be responsible and show up every day and be a good teammate. Whether that's a overseas player, whether that's a high school kid that understands he's a developmental guy, or it could be a veteran in the portal that just wants to be part of UConn basketball. Well, Kentucky has their version of this in Reese Potter, okay? Kid that grew up in Kentucky, wants to be part of this team. I think he could end up playing a bigger role than we anticipate, but at the very least, he is a guy that can come in, be a great practice player for your team, be a great teammate for everybody in that building, and really play a very valuable role. And I think the best college basketball teams are going to find these guys later in the summer. Again, I think this is just college basketball as a whole. You spend late March, early April, really trying to get those core, 7 to 8 pieces, whether it's returning players, whether it's portal guys, whether it's superstars, whatever. But if you look at the portal right now, there aren't a lot of great players still available, and most of them could end up in the NBA draft, the Darian Williams, PJ Haggertys, etc. So now instead what you do is you focus on getting those star players early, and then you fill out the back part of your roster. And I think the other thing that's important to remember is that in 2025, 2026, we're expecting this house settlement to come through. What is the house settlement? Most people are focusing on the NIL aspect of it, schools paying players directly. But let's also remember this. In basketball, it allows you to go up to 15 scholarship players. And so again, you've probably filled out scholarships, 1 through 9, 1 through 10 in late March, early April, returnees, veterans, portal, this, that, high school players, whatever. But now you have these extra spots that you can bring in for, again, developmental guys that understand that they're developmental guys. Most guys don't, but that's another conversation. Older players that just want to be part of your program. And I think everybody is looking for pieces like this. And I think Kentucky snagged a pretty good one. There just aren't many 7-footers still available that not only are available, but how about this? Want to come to your program in a limited role and are willing to give up a bigger role at power conference schools to play for your university. So again, for the non-Kentucky fan that watches this and says Torres is overselling it like he always does, I'm just here to tell you, this is a very nice piece and a very good addition late in the spring for Mark Pope. We are now in April, but as I said, there's no slowing down Mark Pope.